Chapter 10. Being stuck inside this monster's body was a taxing experience I cannot forget. Though I spent the night alone and quite in peace, I found no rest and sleep as the usual night terrors would force me awake often. I would also continue to deal with the whispers as usual. Although usually I heard them faintly with my ears, it would seem as if I could feel them in some other way, as if the alien's body itself was speaking to me, words of suggestion beckoning me for my very arms and legs to fulfill their usual inhabitants' wishes. Even worse, a new phenomenon overtook me, as throughout the night I would find myself fixated on a certain point on the ceiling. The irrelevant point seemed to move after I was wrestled awake each time, and by morning it had moved below the horizon. I felt drawn to walk towards the point on my way to class, and it took a fair deal of effort to conquer the impulse to stare straight below me during class. As I rested my eyes for a brief moment, I could see what it was I was looking at, for it was something among the stars that beckoned me, amid the night sky overnight, sinking below the horizon in the morning and now slowly drifting southwest. The member of the great race that had swapped minds with my classmate did not attend morning classes, but arrived later that day. I rushed to inquire the status of the device that would return me to my rightful body, but was met with the creature falling to its knees. With a weak voice and an exhausted expression, the thing ignored the severity of my plight and explained it had spent the night busying itself with local entertainment. Again the obsession of Earth culture to these things was not lost on me, for this creature had traveled far across time and space just to sample simple games or television programs. I could no longer find the energy to be shocked at such realizations, and invited the host of the Human to lunch to hear the status of the apparatus. The mind-swapping machine was not ready yet, it explained, as it still needed time to charge. I would have to endure this body, these whispers, visions, and this magnetic attraction to somewhere else until night. I closed my eyes again, the conversation of the aliens around me fading in and out among the suggestions of this body, speaking remnants of words past when it walked the earth under the guise of an Egyptian pharaoh gathering followers, urging me to sign the Book of Azathoth, or even directing me to create offspring with a certain human, and if the body it appointed me to wasn't my own, I fear I would not have been able to resist. And I did my best to ignore these impulses. An offhanded remark from a time traveler called my attention with a start. The thing which was still gorging itself of human culture spoke its remorse that our planet had to be erased. When we demanded an explanation from the Yith, it calmly told us that in the future, Earth did not exist. It was destroyed by an intergalactic space agency, the reason for which was not recorded in the Yith's great archives. I made to demand more information from the alien mind inside my classmates. The alien inside my own urged me to calm down, for it insisted that nothing of the sort could happen in its presence. Though not particularly satisfied with such protection, I did not press either party further. Later that day, I led the party of aliens and time traveler to a classmate's home. A longtime friend of mine who I have made mention before did not attend classes that day, and considering his studious nature and good attendance records, and the state curate Emma was in, I decided it necessary to make a call to his home, but could not do so normally due to the body I was currently in. We arrived at his home, but there was no immediate answer at the door. I felt an increasing dread at what lay in store for us in this house, but had no course of action without any response at the door. Suddenly a high-pitched noise sounded from the bag of the Yith that had accompanied us, a response from the device that it had used that had taken my mind from my body, which it said was a response of another Yith. And almost immediately, a crash from the second-story window called our attention, and my classmate landed on the street in front of us. With a look on his face I had never seen before, this was surely another Yith, that uneasy presence unmistakable and quite like the aura that the body of the other girl carried. This one was an extremist, one of the members of the great race that aimed to transplant themselves among humanity for the sake of our culture, and upon this accusation from the first-time traveler, the thing turned to make its escape. We followed it to a nearby park, and on our arrival, the sky turned red, that deep crimson aura that seemed to accompany these extraterrestrials during times of conflict. It stopped before what seemed to be a great pile of rubble, slabs of stone and machinery that had not been there before. We made to approach the thing but were stopped as it raised a device similar to the one the original Yith visitor possessed, threatening to do harm to its host body if we made any move. It summoned another device, a towering apparatus that rose from the ground, and explained its purpose, to transplant the minds of humans and Yith, and allow them to take over human culture and entertainment. The alien inside my body stepped forward to oppose the great machine, but I could not imagine my body being of any use in the face of such a thing, and made to hold it back. It was the two others who stepped forward. Two different species, both known to us as great old ones. Surely no mere time traveler in a human body could oppose such things. But it had made preparations, it seemed, and the elemental powers that the things possessed were cancelled out by the pistol-like device it carried. Wind and fire vanquished, and the minor nuisance of the other youth cast aside, the thing inside my long-time friend turned to the apparatus. I had to stop him, but I couldn't move this foreign body. I could only watch as it turned towards the device. With a great flash of light, the monolithic machine roared to life, and I felt as the beings around me all braced for its effect. As the light subsided, however, we found no change. I was still stuck inside the body of the silver-haired alien, and it was stuck in mine. The two youth made no exchange, and the great old ones made to accost the offender with sheer force. But as I tried to protect the body of my friend, a booming voice came from the towering machine. The voice came as a surprise to all of us, even the member of the great race that had apparently summoned it. It recognized the voice as the leader of its organization, indeed the organization of extremists that the other youth had mentioned. And at that, the terrifying abomination took shape, as the form of a being grew to the size of the machine. A figure in formal clothing rose to the sky, giving the machine the impression that it was alive, and as soon as that thought came to the surface, a number of tentacles sprang from the ground, long, weighty, orange tentacles that stretched as high as the tower itself. And the booming voice spoke, informing its pawn that the true purpose of the device was to destroy the planet all along. The prior prediction of the former youth was true, and its fruition was closer at hand than any of us had imagined. The King in Yellow and the Living Flame rushed forward, fighting through the mass of tentacles without their normal elemental powers to aid them, in a bid to save the planet. As the others fought, the extremist youth, angered by the betrayal of its superior, also took to the offensive. It was overwhelmed by the tentacles, and I found myself rushing forward to save my friend's body before he was struck by the squirming orange appendages. When I looked in my hand, I saw that infernal melee weapon that the outer god normally favored. Whether by practice or the frenzy of the situation, I found I could move this body with greater speed and power than my body would normally afford. After all, this was the body of a deity, and among the whispers and visions I could feel the power within it. Feeling confident, I took to the fight, cutting through tentacle after tentacle of the being, and as I moved faster and struck harder, I could hear the whispers turn to screams, the body pleased with how familiar I was becoming with it, encouraging me to use it more, become one with it, surrender my mind to it. No, I just needed it for now. This was enough, borrowing its power to defeat this terrible thing in front of me. Surely I can ignore these words for just a while longer. But as I battled with the towering oppressor and the body calling to me, a larger appendage slithered out of the center of the tower, a tentacle much larger than the others with an organ-like machine attached to it. It snuck behind me as I dealt with a number of tentacles that had made to grab me. Light gathered at its apex and the beam shot forward, too quickly for me to react. The bullet of light came onto me, but to my horror, it was not my mind it would strike, for my body dove forward. The alien in my body threw itself in front of the beam to protect me. My body was struck in the chest and landed at my feet. A sudden stillness hung in the air. As I tried to comprehend what had just happened, cries of rage came from the red-haired alien, anguish from the fate of the mind that was trapped in my body. Even the unspeakable one stood in silence at the scene. Even the voices of the body grew silent as I dropped to ground at the sight of my own body. Perhaps it was still connected to its mind in some way and came silent as it was snuffed out. Or maybe this body had a will of its own and was stunned to see its true master fall to its feet. As for myself, I cannot remember what ramblings I produced that day. It has always been my intention to record things unrecordable, names, places, creatures, and other things normally unfit for writing, whether for the safety of the reader or my own sanity. But I cannot put into words the feeling of watching oneself die from the vantage point of something else. I do not remember if I simply felt sorrow in losing my body, or if I was maddened by the prospect of spending the rest of my days trapped inside that thing. And yet, as they have so many times before, these things were merely out to make a mockery of me at every available opportunity, no matter how maddening the situation is. No matter the danger to myself or even the entire planet, it was always the same. The body I feared to be dead now reached forward, and locked the mouth of my body against the mouth of its own. Stunned as I was, I managed to push away the silenced whispers of the outer god's body, bursting into a mad choir of pipings of glee. The thing in my body rose to its feet and laughed over the successful operation of its plan. Surely it knowingly enacted such a plot. It produced a small black rock from my chest pocket. That trinket which it handed me so long ago had taken the blast instead of my body. Angry as I was, there was no time to retaliate in any way, as the organ which had nearly taken my life began to fire again. But another beam of light came, this time from the mind-swapping contraption from the Yith, and it would find its mark first. After the dust cleared, I found myself back in my own body, a sensation which brought relief beyond measure. With the crawling chaos in its proper body again, it took to the nuisance of the living machine with relative ease. It donned that brown armor I had seen before, the voice of the leader confused over how it had such power when the great old once had none. It demanded that its purpose was necessary for the good of the galaxy, but its cries went unheard by the malignant deity. With nothing but brute force, the alien sprang forward and drove its arm through the organ-like machine on the largest appendage, ripping it apart and the Cyclopean tower along with it. Just like that, the device which would destroy the Earth was dealt with, and the crisis thoroughly averted. The two Yith, seemingly appreciative of the assistance, vowed to return the bodies they borrowed to the minds of their rightful owners and travel back to their own time period. And with a flash of those devices, the two bodies crumbled to the ground, unconscious, but safe, and notably lacking the otherworldly quality that marked the great race. And with that, another terrifying ordeal came and went. How many times had I faced death, or at least the brink of sanity, and managed to return? How many times had I faced the threat of the end of the world and saw the next day? Though I had the protection of a being as great as Nyarlathotep, I am sure it is also that thing I have to thank for all the danger as well. Surely none of these horrors would find me otherwise. Even though I survived yet another event, there was no relief for me, for even as I returned to my body, I could still hear the encouraging whispers of the outer god's silver-haired form, the monosyllabic, guttural words repeating themselves in my head, but I still refused to voice them in proper. I could still resist, though these events were undeniably taxing. My instructor pulled me away from class the next day to speak with me about the outburst the morning prior. But if I attempted to tell him the truth, I knew my next destination would likely be the asylum. End of chapter.